Got it. Almost there. Cool. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Jeff Salzman here, and welcome to the Daily Evolver Live, which we do every Thursday at 11. I'm here with Ankur, the light, my integral buddy, with whom I try to sort this evolving world out. So, yeah, welcome, Ankur.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Very happy to be here. Share a little space with you, space and time, as always.
Yeah.
So,
me too.
I got something
so
for
you've
us
got
today.
a topic, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah. And so I went to the newspaper online, the New York Times today, and I saw this article that it really captured my attention because I've been thinking about ethnocentrism and just the different ways into that, both in my life and what we see on the news. And I think this will help us get there. And it's called Denmark Aims a Wrecking Ball at Non-Western Neighborhoods. So I'll detail a little bit what's going on in the article, and then I'd like to provide some of my own context, because I don't think they did a great job of it, actually, in this article. But the basic idea is that there's all these public housing projects in Denmark, and there's now a project, I think it started in 2018, part of like a wider package of social reforms, where they're like, hey, all these people are living in these projects and they're not fully integrated into Danish society. Like, they have their own culture, their own subculture, their own language. You know, a lot of these are immigrants from, you know, different parts of the world. Like in the article, they mentioned East Germany and Iran, I think maybe Turkey. There's a lot of them happen to be Muslim, and that comes into the article as well. But the basic idea is like, we want to get these people more integrated into society and making more of a contribution to our society. So one of the quotes is, "The government says the plan is meant to dismantle parallel societies, which officials described as segregated enclaves where immigrants do not participate in the wider society or learn Danish, even as they benefit from the country's generous welfare system." So the kind of one of the larger, and then there's these people that are like, hey, this is terrible. You can't just destroy people's houses and move them to other places. There's a whole like kind of racist or anti-Muslim, like, why are you singling out the, and they're singling out people that are immigrants or like Muslim or something like that, where it's just like, how can you do that? How is that legal? There's that whole aspect of it too. But there's so here, the law mandates that in neighborhoods where at least half of the population is of non-Western origin or descent, and where at least two of the following characteristics exist: low income, low education, high unemployment, or high crime, the share of social housing needs to be reduced to no more than 40% by 2030. So that's kind of the tension today, and what this article is about is like, hey, is this a good idea or not, is the question for the reader. But I just want to provide a little more context around the ethnocentrism, because I don't know specifically the history of Denmark, but I do know in other places. And so I'm projecting, extrapolating here, that when immigrants came to these countries, the people who were already there, so the immigrants from previous waves in America, or, you know, probably in Denmark also, were not super stoked to mix with them. And so like when the Irish people or the Italian people or now the Indian people or the Sudanese people come here, it's like there's a lot of the population that's like, ooh, I'm doing my thing. Why don't you go live over there? And so that was from the origin of immigration. There was this idea of kind of ethnic separation. And like, we're doing our thing over here. Fine, we have to accept that you're going to come here for whatever economic or, you know, demographic reasons, or maybe this refugee war situation or whatever it is. You go live over there. And then the architecture that was popular at the time, you know, these like giant public housing buildings that now we see, of course, have all these problems, right? So there's like an ethnocentric origin to this problem, if we think it's a problem. And then the people who are coming, and I have this personal relationship to this because my family, you know, my mom immigrated from India. My mom is a super unusual woman. She's like divorced twice, lived all over the, you know, she's just like, just moved to a rural area with like only white people. She's not like the typical immigrant, but the rest of my family kind of are. And they all basically live in New Jersey, and they hang out pretty much, as far as I can tell, exclusively with Indian people. They watch Gujarati language TV, read Gujarati language newspapers, have amazing Gujarati food every day for dinner, go to Gujarati grocery stores. They're in one of these parallel societies. They're in a wealthy version of it, not like the kind of poor version of it in this article. But there is some, you might call that ethnocentrism in there as well, where they're pretty stoked to be in their parallel society. And so there is a level in these modern multicultural democracies that the segregation and ethnocentrism works for the different communities at different times. And it's not always working for everybody, which is what's going on here. So I just wanted to provide that little bit of context, that it's not just like, it's not like it's any one thing for any one group at any one time.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well said. And yeah, I think you've covered the waterfront pretty well here. And in a way, the best of all of what you talked about were your at least relatively wealthy Indian relatives who were enjoying their culture and their subculture in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So they're not committing crimes. They have high education, probably better than the white people. The Indians as an ethnic group, I think, are among the highest educated. And what were the other things? And so low income, education, crime, you're talking about, these are the problem communities in Denmark. So it's a difference between a subculture that has a big red strata in it, the red strata being the low education, low income, can't fit into the modern world, uses crime. I mean, they're making a living, but it's not within the system because they can't function in the system, and they don't want to, actually, is the other piece. So those are two different things. And I have to say that for the most part, if we think of Muslim Americans, the integration has been pretty successful in many ways. There's still the Black, people coming over from tribal in chains that were really even legally persecuted until 50 years ago. But even that, the Black middle class and the achievement rates in Black culture are astonishing as well. So, but we have hillbilly subcultures back where I come from, that low education, broken families, crime, that sort of thing. So there's these little red subcultures, and so Denmark's trying to deal with them, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's really interesting, I think, from an American point of view, because just from this article, and again, I'm not deep into Danish internal politics, but given what they said in this article from the different sides of like the Danish parliament and people talking about it, everybody there is pretty down with the welfare state.
Mm-hmm.
There's not like some sort of thing about, we don't want that. They're like, dude, how do we get this welfare state to work better and be more inclusive? And there's like, it's so funny coming from here where there's a big challenge about like, there's a lot of resistance, like the word welfare is bad. They have this whole thing where over there, it's really like when economists came up with like the word welfare, like 80 years ago, whatever, it wasn't a bad thing. It was like, we're interested in welfare for people, like people doing better. And that's really how they use the term, in European social democracies in general. And they're just like, hey, how do we make this community function better? And this is one idea they have. And reading about it, it just seems like there is a little bit of like racism in there and like unhelpful ethnocentrism in this policy. Because it doesn't, you could just target it based on the socioeconomic indicators. You don't need to have anything about the origins of people, and you'd probably get the same results. So it's like, why? Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure, based on what you said, that they're using ethnicity. If you're talking about, I guess non-Western.
Non-Western.
Yeah. So there you go. But also, I don't know. I'm not going to defend this policy, but to the degree that it's ethnocentric itself, and of course it is, because Danish society, well, first of all, the social democracy, that's sort of going to be social center of gravity green. That's just a feature of that. And totally. Europe, Western Europe, is at least a half a stage to a stage beyond America in that evolution. So that's just something we would notice from development. What was I going to say about the? So yes, they're all in on the social welfare state, and to the degree that people are not productive, but living off of that welfare state is not good, you know. So and so, you know, I don't know. It's low. You mentioned low income, education, crime. Those are sort of independent variables that we can measure. Non-Western, I guess if that's a factor, that's, you know, I was going to say that although they've reached a certain green center of gravity in terms of their economic system, there's still an ethnocentric Danish thing, you know. So
that flavor,
that strat is still there.
It's interesting. So here's, maybe I want to break it down into two things, and then this discussion might be a little more interesting and precise. Yeah. One is like, we have these socioeconomic problems that every modern state has. We want to fix them. Great, not surprising. But the thing that's interesting to me is I'm thinking about my family in New Jersey. It's not clear from this policy, but it seems like that would be offensive to their idea of social democracy. To have wealthy people, they're not no problem in terms of the socioeconomic indicators. They're all like really contributing to the state, but they're all hanging out in their own little world and reading their own language newspapers and not speaking Danish and not generally mixing with the whole. Their notion of the modern mixed welfare state is offended by that. And really? That's something, yeah. Because that's, I mean, and I can relate to that.
Okay.
Like when I was hanging out with my family, I was like, something about this doesn't feel right.
Really?
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think it's a very orange sensibility, and where it's like, dude,
it's an orange sensibility on their part, so to speak, or
no, on my part,
on your part. Yeah.
Where it's like, I want us all to be mixing. I want us all to be having babies together and going to college together and partying together. And that's how we're going to get to this future.
Yeah.
And having these parallel societies, which I like that. I like that term a lot. I mean, I think the old term was like ghettos. So it's a little bit better. Is even when they're economically beneficial and they're kind of paying their dues in the welfare state, it's just not good for like national harmony, because we don't have the sense of a culture. And I don't know, personally, I do not know how, and here's a challenge. I think it is really important to have a sense of a culture. And I do not know how we do that in a multicultural society. And so this goes back to Israel, which is in the news. But I had a friend many years ago in New York who is Jewish American woman, grew up in Southern California, and was just talking about how left out and isolated she felt with all of like the Christian holidays being celebrated at school. And how it was like, she just like feel like she didn't belong. It wasn't like her thing. And she just dreamed. She wanted to go to Israel because she wanted to like be in a place where she and everybody else were celebrating the same thing. And there's this real shared vibe and culture, right? And I really like, at the time I was surprised. I was like, what are you talking about? It's fucking insane. But now, like, I've had enough experiences in my life where I get that. And I get how we all feel that. And it's totally antithetical to modern society. And to the extent to which people try to do that, it's not, I don't think it's helpful. Whether it's my relatives in New Jersey or whatever it is, you know, that's like, it's not going to lead to building because we're in a multicultural world in modern countries.
Yeah.
And it's like that impulse, while we all have it, and I want to find a way to honor it, I want to find a way to honor it while including it in some larger culture. And like Baywatch is just not doing it for me. There's got to be something more than just TV, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah. I mean, I think I mean, you say it so well, and I get it. And this is a job for Integral.
yeah,
Ankur.
so tell me, you are the prophet,
Yes,
Jeff Salzman.
this is a job for Integral.
How does this look? How do we have a culture, a modern culture, like a postmodern, whatever, integral culture in society that includes this desire for people to like celebrate the holidays with their other people that they're like?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, first of all, we're talking about the 3 tiers of development that are currently online: traditional, modern, and postmodern. Okay. And so to the degree, all 3 of those strata are these worldviews, these energetic systems of the human psyche that one evolved out of the other. They're all included to the degree that people are evolved to the postmodern. But what you're talking about is this delicious quality of the traditional, where we know who our people are, and we have this karma of history together, and we have these holidays, and we have these beliefs, and there's just something so relaxing about being with people in that mode. And that's great. Now, what's not great is indigenous traditional, so to speak, back when modern wasn't online, we're talking 300-400 years ago, people thought that, people hated each other, they fought each other, there was all kinds of family breakdowns. There's the reality of it. But having that traditional society, like your folks in New Jersey or the Amish,
Yeah,
where I come from,
yeah,
okay,
right.
they're and so actually they are embedded. It's not antithetical to modernity. They can be perfectly well embedded in modernity, in the sense that they're productive members of society. They're not living off of anybody else. They're educated. A lot of their kids are getting their minds expanded. Some of them are leaving home. Some of them are marrying outside the system. But, a lot of them are like, this is precious. I don't want to leave this. And
Yeah.
so they are. This is the nature of human evolution. We're going to have people with 2, 3, 4 worldviews online at the same time. And so, yeah, the national culture is going to be that. Actually, it is that in a certain way. We're working. We have some hiccups and some tragedies along the way, but we're working towards that, where the culture actually is literally multicultural, so that everybody gets that meaning. That the traditional level is where you have meaning. When you get to modern, meaning kind of goes away. You're really no God, that my people, the human nature, the evolution, all of this is like it disenchants the world. I mean, the upside is it creates the modern world and triples lifespans and skyscrapers and the whole modern world. But the downside is, that this loosh, this liquid community of these traditional communities gets dissolved, and there's an aggression towards them from modernity. There's some truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
But in its best, modernity can handle it, provided people are peaceful and productive. And then when you get to post-modernity, of course, that's when you get into noticing all of the injustices along the way and, whatever. But if a subculture is productive, I say let it be as liquid as it can possibly be with itself, and be part of this bigger system, which your relatives are, I would argue.
I don't know. Like my cousin, he's highly educated. Like he went to, he got his like a PhD pharmacist or something.
Yes,
definitely integrated. But this is where I think modernity and capitalism are just so lame. Is that if you look at on paper, Yeah, the fact that my family's there is so good for the state of New Jersey and for the US and this and that. But in terms of community, and this is a character, I don't actually, maybe they do. I don't know as much about them. But wouldn't it be better from the sense of our like the community of New Jersey, not the balance sheet of New Jersey, but like the community, if they were like, if more people, like white American people, had access to hang out with my aunt, who is an amazing Ayurvedic doctor and makes like the best food and super smart and really fun. But that's like not happening. You know, she's only hanging out with other Gujarati people. Do you know? Like to me, the opportunity of living in this culture, like a lot of people come here for the economic opportunity, but I'm thinking of the opportunity of the community is for these people to meet each other and hang out and get to know people from all different worldviews and across the world and stories and myths and languages and jokes. And like, that to me is what is really going to bind us together and help us not fracture into civil war. Is the love. And so the critique of the parallel society, and this is like way far from what they're doing in Denmark, right? I'm not justifying that.
Yeah.
But the critique is, where's the love? Like, where's the mixing in this like modern polity? Why are you just hanging out in your neighborhood? And it's the same for like the Hasidic neighborhood in Brooklyn, or it's all the same. But like, why are we not spending more time together?
Well,
that's the miss. To me, that's the missed opportunity.
Well, I mean, I'd argue that that we're moving in that direction. If you look at where the subcultures of Italians and Irish in New York,
totally,
whatever, in the 1800s, you'd watch Gangs of New York. You know, it would make Denmark look like paradise.
No, that's
Denmark
totally true.
like. Anyway,
200 years later, it's all gone,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, and it's now, who cares? An Irish person marries an Italian person. It's maybe interesting, but it's nothing more than just sort of a little 5-minute conversation.
Yeah,
that will happen with your Indian, the kids, kids. It will happen, and I don't think we necessarily have to be in a big hurry as long as we're all getting along, honestly. And maybe just let everybody be where they are. And the life conditions are such that white people can hang out with your aunt if they want to, and she can hang out with them. I imagine as a pharmacist, she meets a lot of white people in ways that her aunt in India would never. So it's a longer term system to get to where you're going. But I think we're getting there.
Yeah, it makes sense. Everyone's always telling me to be patient. Fine, join the club, Jeff.
Fine, I'll be patient.
Okay, can I read the last paragraph of this article just to close us out on this? And it's pretty funny because it's a sick burn on the U.S.
SICK burn.
Yeah. It's like, it's really, I mean, it's really if you're listening to this and you're from Chicago, get ready, because this is a burn. All right. On a recent day, Shirin Hadianad stood in a courtyard cluttered with furniture near her soon-to-be demolished row house in Volsmos, watching children play with friends with whom they've grown up. Unlike her neighbor, Mrs. Hadianad said she liked living there. We would have wanted to leave this neighborhood if there was gunfire or fighting, stabbings, or police sirens around the clock. But there isn't. We live in Volsmos, not Chicago.
Yeah.
Which is like,
that's a sick burn.
Yeah, I mean, what does she know about Chicago? But she's just like, boom.
Yeah.
So
I think we're famous. Yeah. Well, that's a maybe a whole other discussion, but it's not like we don't deserve it. Yeah.
But I just thought that was
yeah.
Just talking about like she lives in this place that falls under their regulations of it's more than 40% of this and that, and these indicators, non-Western. But she's like, my quality of life is dope. Like, I'm loving this. Why are you moving here?
Yeah.
I don't live in Chicago.
And I don't know. I in some ways, I get that Denmark's going to have its ethnocentric energetics. That's just going to be part of it. And certainly so did the immigrants and the second generation and so forth. So welcome to human evolution. That one group is moving in on another group is basically a one-sentence description of human history. You know, this is not a new story. So how a country like Denmark that does have a postmodern center of gravity in terms of, you know, intellect and education and even the social welfare system, how that handles this and doesn't let it degrade into a Chicago, maybe is what's interesting here. And again, I'm kind of agnostic. I don't know. You gave statistics and stuff from outside of this article. I don't trust the New York Times like I used to, you know, honestly. So I'm very curious, though. You got my attention on this one.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I thought this was a fun investigation.
Yeah.
Because this current, you know, for me, this current is very alive in me. And maybe what I want to bring to the listener for reflection is, in what ways is this current of ethnocentrism alive in you?
Yeah.
And that's worth preserving, you know,
well,
not criticizing.
Yes. Or in what way do you wish it were?
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who were raised modern. They actually don't have relatives, you know, that they know. They're small families. They never really went to church. There's going to be some remedial work as people move into integral, where they do find some sort of tribal, you know, in the best sense of the word, or who are my people? And that's a challenge. There's, I think, an interesting challenge as we move forward in a multicultural society is it's not going to be our relatives. You know, it's not going to be the people from some homeland that's 6 generations past.
Yeah.
It's going to be who's my people, you know, and who gets me? Who do I get? And then I think there's a movement towards what do they call it? There's like this doomer optimist thing, this resettling or re-community where people find each other in community and move to each other and have intentional kind of, what's the latest iteration of intentional community? There's always somewhat problematic, but I bet there's a lot of problems are being solved around that. And I'm interested in that. So, you know, I think that's how we'll add this ethnocentric layer, or this traditionalist layer, where I know who my people are and my kids know who their aunt and uncle is, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think we're figuring that out. Yeah. And not a moment too soon. All right, my dear friend.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Glad we got that figured out. Straightened out. All right. Ankur Delight,